if you clicked on this, you probably want to gain the kind of muscle that makes people look at you and be like, oh, that girl lifts. Yeah, she knows her shit. If you don't know me, my name is Haley. I'm your realistic and balanced bestie, helping you build a stronger brain and body. This is part 5 to your guide of learning literally everything you need to know to have a successful fitness journey. If you haven't checked out the other parts, we have covered literally so much. We've gone over everything you need to know about setting goals, starting a plan, and finding your starting point. We have also deep dived into how to have a successful fat loss journey and also how to have a successful body recomp. So it felt fitting that today is really just a deep dive focused on how to have a successful building phase, aka how to really focus on building muscle or how to have a successful bulk, which I know that word is a little touchy. We'll get into that in a little bit. During my best bulk, I was up to about 130 pounds, which was a huge jump considering I started my fitness journey at around 105 pounds, and I'm also 5'1", so 25 pounds of muscle gain is a huge difference on my body. After that big bulk, which did take me about 2 years, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I was not only the strongest that I have ever been, but I also was the most confident that I had ever felt. And I think if you've ever also done a bulk, you know that the confidence that you get from being that strong and that confident in your body is unlike anything else. You will literally feel like you could body slam an entire 6-foot-tall lumberjack after a successful bulk, and I am so here for it. So first we're gonna talk about what a bulk is, who should bulk, and how to do it. Now, what is a building phase? Oftentimes you're gonna hear this called a bulk or a bulking phase, but I do find that calling it a bulk turns off a lot of clients, especially women clients, and I really don't blame them because we've kind of been conditioned to associate the word bulk or bulky with getting fat or getting really boxy and just not good terms in general. I've also done an entire episode on the concept of getting bulky or what could cause you to be getting bulky, so if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend going to that after this video. All that to say that I typically try to refer to it as a building phase, but if you hear me call it a bulking phase throughout this video or say bulk or anything like that, I don't want you to get turned off. I don't want you to get scared. It doesn't mean what you think it means. We are just talking about building muscle. To put it simply, that is all a bulk is. A bulk is an intentional period of eating in a surplus with the intention to gain muscle. Now, a lot of times in the fitness community, you're going to hear people refer to the terms either dirty bulk or a lean bulk, and really the only difference between those two is that in a dirty bulk, you're typically not really focused on eating good quality calories, and you're also probably doing it for a lot shorter period of time, because when you're doing a dirty bulk and you're just eating whatever you want, you're really not going to be able to do that for a long period of time without gaining an excess of fat. Now, when you do a lean bulk, which is really what I'm going to be kind of talking about today, you are going to be focused on doing it a lot more sustainably, probably over a longer period of time, and you're going to see a little bit less of a fat mass gain. You are obviously still going to see a little bit of fat mass gain because, again, you are eating in a surplus and it's inevitable, but the goal is to not have more than 50% of that be fat mass gain, with the other 50% of that being from muscle gain. When it comes to who should bulk, I think the answer is a lot more of the population than you might think. One of the biggest groups of people that could benefit from a bulk is people who consider themselves to be skinny fat. And I know a lot of times when you're skinny fat, you think, oh my God, I just have to lose this weight and then I'll look good. But in reality, what you need is just to build some muscle. To build that toned look that you're looking for, you're gonna get that by building some muscle onto the frame that you already have. And that was the case for me personally. I was very skinny fat, and I found that once I started to put on muscle mass, I had a completely different body composition, and it did not come from losing weight at all. It purely came from putting on some muscle. A bulk is also really great because it can help improve any hormonal imbalances that you might have, because a lot of times hormonal imbalances are due to under eating. In my experience, a lot of times when I put my female clients on a calorie surplus, even of just 100 calories, they find that they're actually losing body fat and gaining muscle at the same time because they were just eating so little to start that this surplus is actually what their body really needed. And I know that sounds a little confusing, and it kind of delves into the realm of a reverse diet almost, but that is a whole nother topic that I will go into eventually. Just know that a bulk is a great option for anybody who wants to feel stronger, build more muscle, have more energy, and possibly heal any hormonal imbalances that they might have. I also think that a lot of people assume that a bulk is the easier option when compared to a cut because they're like, oh, you just have to eat more, that's easy, which is technically simple in theory, but in reality, a bulk can be very draining on your mind, and that's something that you really have to prepare for going into it. A huge thing that you have to accept when going into a bulk is that you're going to have to use a scale more than you had to use during a cut, and you really have to learn to remove any attachment that you might have to the number on the scale. The scale is purely going to be used as a measurement tool here, and you really have to be able to look at the numbers as trends that you're following instead of something that you're attaching your worth to. You're going to be using the the scale to ensure that your body weight is not decreasing week to week. Whereas in a cut, you really don't have to track your weight this much because you can more so go off of measurements and seeing your body composition in a mirror or in photos. But in a bulk, you really want to make sure that you're not dipping down below your starting weight, because that's going to negate the whole purpose of trying to build muscle, get some more calories, and eat in a surplus. So if your weight is going down, you are not in a surplus. There is no way around that. And that is why the scale is such an important tool when you're bulking. And I'm not gonna lie and tell you that seeing the weight go up on the scale isn't gonna affect your mental health, because I can tell you firsthand that you're gonna feel some type of way when you see that number going up and you're kind of like, whoa, I was really comfortable at this number. But when you think about it, we have just been trained to attach meaning to these numbers when really they're just numbers. That is all they are. They are purely used as a tracking tool that we are following on the same trend to get us to our goal. And I think a lot of the fact that we have all of these meanings around the numbers comes from a lot of like programming and things that were introduced to us, especially with our generation when we were younger, and we would see things on magazine covers that were like, this is how she got to 105 pounds, this is how she stays under 110 pounds, and there was all of these meanings around numbers, when in reality, none of that fucking matters. The number that is on your scale has absolutely nothing to do with your body composition, who you are as a person, how strong you are. There is nothing that is attached to that number other than the fact that we are going to use it to help us on our journey. So you have to be strong enough when you see that number going up to tell yourself, this is literally a part of the process. You can tell yourself that you are just improving your muscle size, your muscle strength. You can tell yourself that this number is literally nothing more than just proof that you're getting stronger. Whatever you need to tell yourself in those moments, you have to make sure that you have it on lock before you actually start this journey, because if you don't, you're gonna get in there and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I'm gaining weight, I have to stop this, I should go in a cut. And you're gonna completely lose all of the gains that you could have had if you just stuck with it. It's also important to note that when you prepare for bulking, you wanna try to do it for a minimum of 4 months. Ideally, you wanna go for a minimum of 6 months, because that's when you're gonna really notice the best returns here. But at an absolute minimum, you wanna go for 4 months, especially because the goal here is to gain as little fat as possible. And that's gonna be a lot easier if you take your time with it and you really do a slow, drawn out bulk. You're gonna see your body composition completely change when you do it slow and steady versus somebody who's doing like a dirty bulk and they're just doing it for like 2 to 3 months and they're really putting on all of the weight and all the muscle that they can. The cut that you're gonna have after a lean bulk is going to be, 1, so much more sustainable, and 2, so much easier to get to and so much easier to shed off any extra weight as opposed to somebody who does a dirty bulk. It's also important to note that recovery is going to be huge in a bulking phase. Obviously, it's also huge in a cutting phase as well, but in a bulking phase, you are really focusing on your sleep because your muscle is going to be built while you sleep. Your muscles are recovering as you sleep, and this is when you are really going to maximize your potential here. You're also gonna find that your sleep is probably gonna feel a little bit better and a little bit more restful when you're in a bulk, because you're training a little bit harder during this time, which means you're gonna sleep better. And also, eating in a slight surplus is going to help lower your stress levels, which will also help you have a more restful sleep. To recover properly, you also wanna make sure that you're not overtraining, which I know seems kind of backwards because I'm about to tell you exactly how important training is during a bulk. But if you train too much, you are actually doing more damage than good, because your body's just not gonna be able to actually build muscle if you're overtraining it. So some ways to know that you're overtraining are if you are just absolutely gassed, like even after just one set of something, you are just completely toasted, your body is done for, you are gasping for air, you're dying, you feel like you can't lift the weights that you're normally lifting, that's a huge sign. You also might feel like you just have chronic muscle fatigue, like you're just always sore no matter what you do. Even if you trained a muscle group days ago, you might find that you're still sore from it 3-4 days later and it's just not going away. You also might have issues falling asleep or staying asleep, which again is a huge sign of overtraining, because during a bulk, like I said, sleep should be a little bit easier and it should be a lot more restful. So if you're having issues with sleeping, this could be a huge factor why. If you're not sure if you're overtraining or not, make sure that you're staying fully hydrated throughout the day and really trying to prioritize your sleep routine. So doing everything that you can to make sure that you set yourself up for a restful sleep. If you're doing all of that and you still find that your body is absolutely shot and just feels so tired all the time, then you might need to take a little bit of a deload week or some time off from training. And if you end up doing that, I would also recommend going back to your maintenance calories for the time being that you're doing a break from training, just to make sure that you're not gaining any excess fat while you take that time off. And I really didn't mean to go into a whole overtraining tangent, but that does bring me to my next point, which is hydration. While a lot of times water is used in a cutting phase to be more of an appetite suppressant or to help you feel more full, In a bulking phase, water is just as important because water is also a key factor in building muscle. When you're bulking, I know it can feel a little bit harder to try to really get in all of your water because you're gonna feel a little bit more full throughout the day. So really spacing out your water and trying to make sure that you're drinking it all throughout the day, starting as early as possible so that you can get in your entire water intake. That is going to help so much with remaining hydrated throughout the day. You want to try to consume a majority of your water as you do your workout for the day. This is going to help you have a little bit better of a workout, but it's also going to make sure that you stay hydrated even after you finish your workout. Also, drinking your water with your meals or right after your meals is a great way to stay on top of it. And all in all, you really just want to try to aim for your pee to be clear. That is how you're going to know that you are drinking enough water and staying properly hydrated. Now, for the fun part, we are going to talk about training in a bulk. I think a lot of people assume that similarly to a cut, nutrition is going to be the most important factor, but in a bulk, while nutrition is important, I think your training is a little bit more important because if you're not training properly, your body isn't going to just magically know that it needs to turn these excess calories into muscle. It's just going to turn all the excess calories into fat because it doesn't know any better if you're not stimulating it and really trying to build that muscle in the gym. To train properly in a bulk, you really want to make sure that you're prioritizing getting close to failure. This means you are trying to hit that last 2 to 3 reps right before failure for as many exercises as you possibly can. Because if you're not lifting close to failure, then you are not actually building the amount of muscle that you want to in a bulk, and you're essentially just wasting all these excess calories that you're getting in and kind of wasting your time. You'll know that you're getting close to failure when your reps start to slow down significantly, meaning that the concentric part of the exercise is going to get a lot harder. You're gonna feel like your body really wants to use momentum to try to push through the end of those reps, and you might even feel a little bit of muscle shaking during this time too. But don't confuse muscle failure with a burn. A burn is not a sign of muscle failure at all. It is literally just proof that that muscle is working. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I feel the burn, that means I'm getting close to failure, and they stop the move, when really they had anywhere from 10 to 20 more reps that they could have done after they hit that burn point. Another sign that you're getting close to failure is that your heart rate is going to increase. You're definitely going to be able to feel this one. It's a huge sign that I use to track when I'm getting close to failure, but also you can test yourself here by getting to what you think is that last rep. So if you think that your failure point is 12 reps and you stop on the 10th rep, but then you take a 10 to 20 second break, and then you go at it again and you can do 10 to 12 more reps, then you are nowhere close to failure. Because when you are actually close to failure in that last 2 to 3 rep range, you should need your entire rest time in order to recover. Your body shouldn't be able to be like, okay, I took a few breaths, I can go at it again. If you can, that means you need to go up in weight. Training like this also means you are going to be doing less exercises throughout a workout. Because when you're training close to failure and you're training for hypertrophy purposes, it's less about doing crazy amounts of volume and more about doing quality volume on the moves that you're doing. In fact, there's been pretty conflicting data over the years, some saying that you need up to 20 sets per week per muscle group in order to grow that muscle group, while others are saying that 20 is way too much and you only need 6 to 8 sets per week per muscle group to grow that muscle. So ideally, what I find and what I think a lot of people in the fitness community have found is that for smaller muscle groups such as your arms, your calves, your shoulders, things like that, you want to aim for 8 to 10 sets per week for those muscle groups. And for larger muscle groups like your back or your glutes, you can get anywhere from 10 to 20 sets per week for those muscle groups. But again, the closer that you get to 20 sets per week, the more likely you are that you might be overtraining or be at risk of overtraining that muscle. Now, this does typically mean that you need to work out more frequently when you're bulking because you can't really squeeze 20 reps of something into one workout. You need to spread it out across maybe 3 to 4 workouts per week in order to really make sure that you're not completely gassing your body out. Because if you were to try to do 10 sets per muscle group in just one workout, your central nervous system would be so entirely worn out that you would be completely out of commission for the entire week. I think it's good to aim for a minimum of 3 to 4 workouts per week when bulking, but ideally you want to try to get up to 4 to 5 just to really maximize those gains and to spread out that volume throughout the week without having to really squeeze it all in to a few workouts. Now, when it comes to rep ranges, remember our goal here is to build muscle, aka hypertrophy. This means that when training for hypertrophy, our goal rep range is 8 to 12 reps. Now, that's not to say that you can't train lower rep ranges as well, because that is going to be a great way to help build your strength while simultaneously doing more hypertrophy based workouts, but you really want to try to limit any lower rep range stuff, because that is going to really tire out your muscles and you might burn out a little bit easier there. So again, when testing those rep ranges to get close to failure, if you can do 15 to 20 reps before getting tired, you need to make that weight a little bit heavier and you need to try to aim for that 8 to 12 rep range. Now, when it comes to cardio, I know a lot of people think that you have to fully cut out cardio when you're doing a bulk, but that is not true. So if you love doing cardio, don't worry, you don't have to fully cut it out. But I do think it's important to dial it back a little bit and maybe switch up the forms of cardio that you do. So if you're doing really high intensity cardio at the moment, you might want to limit that to just a few times per week, maybe 1 to 2 times, to make sure that you're not overexerting your body with cardio and lifting close to failure, but also to make sure that you're not burning off all of the calories that you're trying to eat here. I also think it's great to maintain a step goal while you're doing a bulk, because a step goal is just a great thing to have, and I think it's wonderful to still be active, and it's not going to completely diminish all of your gains here. Do not worry about it. Now for nutrition. First, we're going to talk about people who are not tracking their calories, and then I'll get into bulking when you are tracking your calories, or if you just want to know your calories and macros in general. So remember when I said that the scale is a huge key in really tracking your bulk and making sure that you stay on track here? It's going to be even more of a key if you are not tracking your calories. And I know that might sound a little bit backwards, but let me explain here. Because it's not impossible to have a successful bulk without tracking your calories, but it is going to be a lot more challenging. I'm not gonna lie to you. So in order to bulk without tracking your calories, first you have to figure out what your baseline of calories is. And to do this, you want to try to eat the same amount of servings of food per day for at least 2 weeks. And you want to also take your weight every single day for those 2 weeks and average out your weight at the end of the first week and at the end of the second week. If your weight is about the same, then it's a good chance that you are at your maintenance calories. If your weight is going down week to week, then you might be in a little bit of a deficit and you want to increase your servings in the next week to make sure that you can get up to a maintenance calorie. Now, also it's important to note that as women, we are going to naturally fluctuate with our cycle. So you might have to do a few weeks of tracking, like 2 to 3 weeks, before you can figure out what your maintenance calories really are and how many servings per day you need for each macro. So once you can see week to week if your weight is going down, going up, or staying the same, you can kind of determine what you need to do with your servings. So again, like I said, if your weight went down week to week, you probably need to increase your servings so that you can get up to maintenance. And this might mean adding an extra serving of protein or carbs. I also really love to use hand portions whenever we talk about not tracking our calories. So the things you need to remember are that a serving of protein is going to be 1 palm size. So if you hold your hand up like you're going to high five someone, that circle of your palm is 1 serving of protein. A serving of carbs is going to be 1 cupped handful of carbs. So holding out your hand like you're about to grab some M&Ms from somebody, that is 1 serving of carbs. And 1 serving of fats is just your thumb size. So holding up a good old thumbs up, your thumb from the knuckle to the end of your thumb is 1 serving of fats. So you can use this to kind of gauge where you're at and make sure that you have an idea of how many servings of each you're having per day, and then you can determine what you need to add week to week to make sure that you are maintaining your bulk. Again, when we're using the scale to track, we want to make sure that number is not going down. There should be no reason, if you are in a bulk, that number should be decreasing week to week, because again, the goal is to be in a surplus, and if you are in a surplus, you should not be losing weight. You might be staying the same, that number might be averaging out week to week, but it should not be trending downward. To have a lean bulk as opposed to a dirty bulk, you want to make sure that the majority of your calories are coming from protein. You also want to make sure that you're mostly eating whole, unprocessed foods and limiting your sugar intake. A huge process here is just listening to your body and really trying to determine what foods give your body the most energy versus what foods make you feel like you're going into a food coma. And then you can kind of tailor your day around those foods and figure out what works best for you. So if you find foods that really give you a lot of energy, you can put those in the daytime. And if you find foods that you're like, oh, I really feel like I'm in a food coma after I eat these, maybe put those as your last meal of the day. Again, just figuring out what works for you is really the key here. It's also important to try to get protein in every single meal that you eat throughout the day so that you can make sure you actually hit that goal at the end of the day. And also trying to start eating right when you wake up is going to be a great way to start triggering your hunger cues and make it a lot easier to fit all of those calories into your day. Because if you sit around all day and then you're like, oh my God, it's 1 p.m. I haven't eaten today, it's gonna be a lot harder to fit all of those servings of food into just a few hours, as opposed to having your entire day to slowly consume all of those servings of food. I also recommend setting reminders to eat if you're like me and you just forget to eat throughout the day. Meal prepping is also a huge key when you're bulking, because I don't know about you, but if I don't have food ready, I'm just not gonna eat. And then I'm gonna let myself get to the point where I'm so starving that I'm just like, let's go to In-N-Out. I'm gonna go get a cheeseburger. So to battle this, you have to make sure that you always have your meals ready to go. Whether you're using pre-made meals or microwavable meals, or you're meal prepping once a week, or you're just making your food as you go throughout the day, whatever it is, one, make sure it's realistic for you, and two, make sure that you have it all planned out ahead of time. Some of my other main tips for eating in a bulk are to utilize your liquid calories. So things like smoothies, shakes, yogurts, anything that's really easy to digest, but also very calorie dense and macro dense. These are great because not only are they really simple to drink or to eat, for those of us who really struggle to eat enough food throughout the day, these are great options because it doesn't really fill you up a lot, but you're still getting in some great macros added on top of a meal. Obviously, you don't want these to be your main sources of calories because you want those to come from whole unprocessed foods, but they are a great additive and can be used in a bind when you're just a little bit low on your calories for the day and you're like, oh, I haven't eaten enough, let me just get this in at the end as a little dessert. You also want to make protein your priority, and by this I mean you want to try to make sure that you hit your protein goal first. So however many servings of protein you need to get a day, make sure you're getting that at the start of your day before you start eating anything else that might be processed or super sugary, because while we are in a bulk and you want to be able to take advantage of the fact that you can eat extra calories here, you also want to make sure that you are still getting in enough protein, because that is the key in building muscle. And if you're not hitting that protein goal, you're not maximizing your muscle gain. Eating high protein is also the key to making sure that you have a more lean bulk and lower your fat gain here as we go throughout this bulk. Lastly, you want to lower your caffeine intake. Caffeine is a natural appetite suppressant, and the last thing we want to do when we are trying to eat more is to have something in our body that is making us less hungry. So you want to try to lower your caffeine frequency, or just lower the amount that you drink each day, and make sure that when you do drink it, you are drinking it after you eat a full balanced meal, and ideally after you drink at least a cup of water. You also want to keep in mind that you're naturally going to have a little bit more energy during a bulk, so you want to make sure that you're listening to your body and being like, do I really need this caffeine right now? Or do I have enough energy and I'm just drinking this out of habit? I also want to address the people that don't want to track their calories just because they don't want to take up the time to do it. If that's you and that's why you think that you don't want to track calories, then we're going to talk about finding your calories first and then using the hand portions to determine how much you should eat throughout the day. Using the calculators I'm about to talk about, you're going to determine what your macros are, and once you have those, you're going to be able to break those down into hand-sized servings so that you can see how much you should eat per day. So you want to keep in mind that one serving of protein is about 20 to 30 grams. One serving of those cupped handful of carbs is about 15 to 25 grams of carbs, and one serving of fats, which is that thumb-sized portion, is about 7 to 12 grams of fat. So for instance, if you need 120 grams of protein per day, looking at that hand-sized portion, you're gonna go, okay, so if each one is about 20 to 30 grams, then I need 4 to 6 palm-sized servings of protein per day. Does that make sense? We're gonna go into how you can figure out those calculations right now. So I have linked two calculators below. One is a calorie calculator and one is a macro calculator. Now for a bulk, you wanna be in a 5 to 10% surplus. So this means you're gonna put all your information into the calorie calculator and then you'll slide it over to either 5 or 10% on the surplus side to get your surplus here. Then you're gonna take that number of calories and input it into the macro calculator, follow all those instructions to get your macros for each protein, fat, and carbs. Now, weighing yourself is also still crucial even if you're tracking, because we don't always have the most accurate tracking abilities, and that's not necessarily our fault. A lot of times some foods just aren't labeled correctly, but also when we're using apps like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or something like that, sometimes we might just be picking the wrong amount of ounces or servings or anything like that as we're going through the app. You really just want to make sure that your weight isn't going down week to week, and if it is, you want to make sure that you're really accurately tracking the ounces and the servings that you're eating into MyFitnessPal or whatever app you use before you add any more calories to your surplus. I also find it really helpful to pre-track, especially when bulking. So the night before, I might just put all of the meals that I plan to have the next day or anything that I've meal prepped into my app so that I can make sure that I'm going to be hitting my calories and hitting my targets, because otherwise I'm more likely to get to the end of the day and be like, oh my god, I still have 600 calories. I need to just squeeze that in even though I have only an hour to eat. Also for me personally, I tend to eat the same things every single day. So if you're also like that, you can get away with just kind of tracking once and then not tracking again until you switch up those meals or until you start to add something different, or if you go out to eat or something like that throughout the day, you might want to input everything else that you ate throughout the day and then also add whatever snacks or food or anything that you've eaten that's different from your typical day-to-day. But overall, that is everything you could ever need to know in order to have a successful bulk and do it with the least amount of fat gain possible. Remember that your mind is going to have to be stronger than any insecurities or any old programming that you might have around gaining weight, gaining muscle, gaining fat, and the number on the scale. Overall, a bulk is going to leave you feeling so strong and so confident that you honestly might never even want to cut again. And I know that sounds dramatic, but just trust me. Don't knock it till you try it. As a reminder, I do have my fitness app linked below, and you can get unlimited fitness and mindset programs as well as recipes, meditations, and a community of like-minded babes that are also on this fitness and mindset journey alongside you. You can claim your 2 weeks free below, and if you join because of this episode, please let me know by sending me a message on the app and letting me know if you started your bulk from this video. As always, if you learned something, please share this video with a friend or share it on your Instagram story and tag me at Haley Lene. And don't forget to let me know how your bulking journey is going if you started after this episode. That is all that I've got for you today. Until next time, be kind to your mind, to your body, and to others, and happy healing.